Jay Sethi, VP of Strategic Solutions, Chief Enterprise Architect. I did actually study AI in 1994 at PhD level in the University College of London in the UK. I ended up not completing my PhD for one reason or another. But I've been around the AI space for a long time. I think it's interesting seeing how AI has evolved now with RPA. I would just wish I'd looked into the whole thing earlier on and made some killing on it. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what we see at Infogame around robotics and cloud. But I heard some comments here that it's not a point solution. We wholeheartedly agree. So we actually take a platform strategy approach, and RPA is a component of that. So in our approach, and you'll see, basically it builds upon 3 layers. You can just build the 3 layers up from international linking. So essentially, we're a software engineering company, right? So you'll see our tagline is engineering business outcomes. Vinay nicely put it right. We're focused on heart of our company, software engineering, right? So we actually believe that our foundation of doing everything is around software engineering, and RPA is part of that. So one of the examples I see where RPA plays is why build microservices for everything, right? You can't, right? If you have a client has a mainframe, right? They're still coding assembler to their mainframe. And I said to them, well, instead of trying to build microservices, why don't you use an RPA process to essentially automate the integration to your back-end system? It's not going to be fast, but essentially will allow your data to be extracted out and then data to be entered back in again, right, through using an RPA process. You can even wrap that in a REST microservice, right? So we're actually talking about how can we try and take them forward with that. Then we have a digital experience layer, right? Essentially, the web is given now. Mobile, as I say, is almost given. But now we get into that specialized devices, IoT. So one of the organizations I worked in the past was a car manufacturer. We essentially did connect a car, capturing the telemetry data, capturing that in another cloud. Unfortunately, Matt, it wasn't Google. But what we were doing was we were capturing the data and actually using the telemetry in answer to your question to actually determine what was the state of the car. Were we getting a level of data that was similar for wear and tear from vehicles, so we could determine if there was a problem with a manufactured part inside the vehicle, so that we could actually then try and get ahead of having to do a recall, right? So we could actually know if there was a problem with a manufactured part, and we'd even track it down to the part level, because we knew the VIN numbers, we knew when the VINs were made, etc. So automation is absolutely key. I wholeheartedly agree with that, Abhishek, right? Lack of talent means that automation is coming in. You've got 3.6% unemployment in the US, and the shortage of finding resources, everyone's trying to automate. CI/CD is a good example of that, right? DevOps. In fact, you will not hear me use DevOps. I always use the word DevSecOps. The reason being is that what is secure today is not going to be secure tomorrow. You constantly have to test your microservices and your APIs. Automation plays a part into that. Okay, and I would even say RPA through testing your user interface that calls your microservices. Then essentially the golden layer, right? So data monetization, right? Using what data you have today, the data that's being even entered in through your RPA process. One thing you'll hear from me, Abhishek, is garbage in, garbage out. Your RPA process, in my view, is only going to be as successful as the data that you input into it, including the training data, and then you measuring the data that comes out of it, right? Because otherwise you're just entering garbage into the system. Then it's no better than a human being. Right, and then the other thing is design thinking. So we have started to transition ourselves to being more of a design thinking company. We've looked at how other organizations take a design thinking approach. So you'll see from us, right, when we come to talk, right, if you were to say, well, I need 4 IPA engineers, we wouldn't say, okay, we've got 4. First question we ask you is what's the kind of problem you're trying to solve. Then we will tell you what we think might be the right level of resources and what needs to be done and how we would be approaching. Okay. All right, next slide. So I talked, I know some of you guys missed it, but I talked about how the 2 key words that we're emphasizing as a company, cloudification and servicification. So these 2 essentially fit in closely. What we're seeing is organizations now, they have a long history, right? People have been in the IT space now 20, 30 years. They built up a significant amount of IT debt, right? They don't want to start big bang. In fact, we don't encourage any customer to start big bang. But they want to be able to take their large monolithic applications, break them down into smaller applications, and this is where automation comes in. So as well as CI/CD, trying to see what you can actually automate through your user interface as well with RPA, but also then looking at how can you use rapid application development. So you can essentially then build up a new UI very quickly, expose it out to your users, continuously modify it to improve the user experience. So we work with a couple of RAD tools. I'm happy to talk in the break about some of the RAD tools that we're working with. And then servicification. So servicification for us basically is a definition of it's taking your large monolithic application, even wrapping that in a REST microservice, and then instead you start to break it down into smaller and smaller services, right? And then even smaller and smaller services you can expose out as microservices and start to monetize those, okay? So if I look at a lot of organizations, I think Visa was probably a good example, right? What they essentially did was, they said, hey, this is microservice. You can start to use it to start to process credit cards, right? And then they actually saw how did it go, how did customers actually use that microservice? How were they actually using it? What was the kind of evolution? So breaking down your large apps to microservices, running them in cloud native containers, so Kubernetes, Docker, right? And that then it's ideal for putting into the cloud, and then essentially running your microservices and even your applications, so you can scale up, scale down, even power them down. So if you're non-production environments when you don't need them, take them offline. If you don't need your disaster recovery environment, take it offline, run it in the cloud, right? So then you can essentially free up the data center space if you are still running the data center. Well, those mission critical applications, or those applications, for example, where you may have sensitive data that you don't want to put in the cloud, right? And then essentially, if we look at it from a digital transformation perspective, I would say basically, if you don't have a website today, then where have you been in the past 20 years, right? But if I look at it now, edge mobile IoT-based apps, right? These things here, and the connected car, chatbots, they're all essentially generating data. Fastest way to scale up and scale down is to deploy on the cloud. So any questions before I move to the next slide? Okay, thanks.
You're crystal clear.
Huh?
You're crystal clear.
Okay, all right. So I'm not going to walk through each of the bullet points. We took a thoughtful approach. So Abhishek, thank you for driving the conversation inside Infogame. But I essentially sent an email to everybody in my team and also to Vinay and Dinesh. And I said, look, so Abhishek is saying all these things, right? How do we, as Infogame, address these, right? How are we seeing it, right, from our experience? Change management is critical, right? I don't think it matters whether it's an automation project, but whatever project you do, right, you have to have consistent change management, right? And that starts from even before you get down to the technical side. It is actually working with the business users and educating them in terms of what can be done and what cannot be done. And then actually trying to build a change management group, and then actually identifying a small problem that you can tackle, and tackling that small problem and making that a success. Now the other thing you'll see is, right, I talked about doing this as a platform-based approach. That means selecting the right kind of technology and the right vendor and the right solutions to work with, and then the right implementation partner. I'm here representing Infogame. I'm obviously going to say, hey, pick Infogame, right? But the idea is that when you select a technology, you have to ensure that the technology can be done as a platform. Often what I've seen in the way organizations fail is they'll pick 2 or 3 of the same different thing and try and roll it out, and then there's confusion in terms of what they should use. Okay, there's no clear guidance of what should be used and where, right? And then I think, building a center of excellence and using that center of excellence across the company to drive the organizational change. So, any questions? What's your thoughts, Abhishek? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. The only thing that I like to add to it is that one of the things we notice when it comes to next generation technology adoption is the extreme bad mouthing of legacy, so to speak.
Yeah.
But when we are talking of change, legacy is the core component of it. And the change that you hope to bring in by way of your aspiration for either digital native or cloud native has to start from legacy somewhere. So it's a core component. Not everything is going to be lift and shift. Even when we are looking at cloud per se, when we are talking about N-tier architecture or service-oriented architecture, moving on to cloud native architecture, you'll notice that a lot of those tenets have underlying components of how legacy architectures were. They have to borrow from it in that sense. So that's where we have to be careful about how we talk about change.
Yeah.
It's not about like lock, stock, and barrel change.
Yeah. If anyone says, well, I want to do a brand new integration platform, first thing I say to them is, well, you know, there are actually some really good commercial platforms out there. There is Apogee from Google, right? There's others out there too. Why are you trying to get into the integration space when you can get commercial off the shelf? Right, so next slide, please. So I thought maybe, a little bit of a delay. All right. I thought I could walk through a case study. So Dinesh is going to walk through a RPA case study. I'm going to do a non-RPA one. So one of the areas that I cover is microservices and integration. We actually help the industry leader of marketing to CPG actually take their microservices and expand those microservices out to be able to offer coupons to consumers. So everybody knows the company that begins with a G, the other G company that does the coupons, right? Well, today when you go into a supermarket, I go into Safeways or to Albertsons or to Walgreens, I get a big printout, right? You guys probably get the same thing, right? You look at this thing and go, I'm never going to use these coupons. They go in the recycle bin, right? Now what they're doing is essentially digitizing those. So instead of next time you check out, and they're actually piloting this right now based upon the development that we've done. The response time that we had to get to was 150 milliseconds, okay, from end to end. Right, so as soon as you check out, 150 milliseconds later, you see the coupon on this thing. Okay, so you now got the coupon. Next time you walk into the store, you can actually pull the app up. You will see the coupons, right? And then the next thing they're doing is they're essentially using the IoT data of where stuff is in the store to actually guide you to where you can go pick the product up. Right? So we actually did this end to end. We built the high availability, built the mission critical environment. It's all running on GCP because we needed quick scale up and scale down. Think about how retail works, right? The busiest time of retail is back to school and then the holiday period. So October, November, December, January. That's true for the CPG community because people are selling candy or chocolate for Halloween, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, right? That's when the retailers and the manufacturers want to get their coupons out. So we built the end-to-end services. We implemented security across the services. In fact, this is actually not even 350 anymore. This is 150 milliseconds, right? So the response time is almost instantaneous, right? And that was because contractually, that is what their client we were working for gave to their client. So often what you'll hear from us is we don't just look at what the client's ask is, we look at what our client's client ask is. What is the end user asking for? And that's again how we bring design thinking into the way that we work. Okay, so just quickly, some of the relevance for you guys, right, is clearly understand what the business requirements are. The business requirements obviously change as you implement a project. Document those requirements and document those changes. Clearly identify what the proposed future state was. One of the lessons that we learned was that in this case, the client had to communicate us to the NFR non-functional requirement around 150 milliseconds. So we ended up working very quickly with them and re-architecting what we built to get down to that 150 milliseconds. And then re-architecting even meant delaying some of their original early requirements and working with their customers in delaying some of the early requirements so we could actually meet a go live date, coming back in again and then meeting those requirements as we learn how people are actually using the coupons. Okay, next slide.